Hey everyone, welcome to Watch Complications. I'm Brian. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and the bell if you want updates. Check out my site, watchcomplications.com, and follow me on Instagram at watch_complications. What I have in this video for you is a beginning to end watch build. Of course, condensed to less than 30 minutes. It takes a lot more time than that, obviously. But what I want to do is start with everything from making the dial. I use the water slide decal process in this build, all the way to seeing what it looks like as the final product, strap and all. I'm calling this the Carl. You'll see why in a second. And it's just a one-off custom build for a customer. I honestly really enjoyed making this custom watch. It's got a beautiful simplicity about it. For the customer, it's got a deep personal connection and meaning, and it was meant as a surprise gift for somebody. And so I don't always take on projects like this, but I connected very well with this particular customer, and I felt like I really wanted to be a part of it and help them out, and it turned out wonderfully. I have a lot of videos that focus on specific parts of the process of making a custom watch, making a custom dial, using specific tools. What I wanted to do here was give an overview and show what it's like making a custom watch beginning to end and just sort of the steps going through that. So the timeline is in the description below, along with other videos that are relevant to this discussion. Check out my playlists on making custom watches, making custom dials. You'll find those helpful for breaking down the process more, but here you can see it all in a condensed format in about 25 minutes. My previous video to this one, where I show using multiple layers of water slide decals, it's called Double Down. I mentioned some of the types of videos that are coming up soon, and I'm not going to go through a list of those or anything, but one in particular is coming up in my Brian and the Grail series. I got my Arm & Strom gravity water back from service. It's been gone for 5 months. I am so happy to have this back. I cannot wait to give you a full overview / review of this, talk about it from a watchmaking point of view, show pictures of the maintenance on this watch, having it broken all the way down, torn apart, cleaned, and talk about what I thought was missing jewels to start with, but turns out to be a much more interesting scenario. So more on this in the near future. I think that's the video I'm going to do next. I also have reviews and a lot of other fun stuff coming up in the making area. But for the moment, let's make a watch. So this is for a project I'm working on right now. I'm going to dip the decal in some water, get my brush and my micro set. Get some on the surface of the dial. Like that. And this will slide off fairly easily. And then we'll lay this down close to where we want it. Get some micro set on it to keep it soft and malleable. Again, these are fairly forgiving, but we do have to be cautious and keep it soft until it's exactly where we want it. So now I'm applying micro sole to soften this up around the edges a little bit more, particularly so it wants to dry out and adhere a little bit more nicely. By the way, it's going to look like it can just easily peel off, and that is because it can. The only thing that's going to keep this thing adhered to the surface is heat. All right, so let's give this a go. I'm going to remove this slowly. That black edge I didn't have sealed against it, so it's going to be a little bit sparse. You can kind of see it there. That's perfectly fine. And like with all things watches, as I always say, just take your time, be patient, go slow. No need to rush. Coming up nicely. Had good adhesion. Just a few more indices to go. And voila. We have the dial. To do a custom build like this with pad printing would take a lot more time, energy, money, everything.
You can see there's a few marks here around the edge from that black border. That's fine. That's going to be covered by the edge of the case. You might get the occasional speck here or there, and that's okay. That, you know, this is a handmade dial. As far as I'm concerned, this is supposed to have a little bit more of a handmade look. It's, you know, something that I printed, designed, put on the dial, and came off really, really good for what it is, which is a, you know, fairly low cost option for creating a custom dial look. So now I just got to put it on the movement and get this thing cased up. All right, putting a watch together today, and I've showed this before, but here's the dial. And first thing I've got to do for this build, since I didn't put the logo on the dial, I'm actually going to put it on the back of the watch movement on the rotor, and this case that I'm going to put it in has an exhibition back. So this is a Siletta 200, so it's 26 jewel automatic. I actually like these better than the ETAs they're based on because I like the font and size of the date better, and they're also a little bit cheaper. So I have holes on my dial holder here that are a little bit bigger to help accommodate, say, center pins for movements. So I can set it down, and now I've got a pretty solid surface, and this movement, the front of it isn't sitting against the dial holder, and now I have a flat surface. I can push this and it doesn't move. It's a pretty simple, solid way to do something like this. So my logo is a little bit too big as an entire thing to put here. So I'm going to actually split it in half. I'm going to put the hat here and the 10.6 underneath. Or maybe I'll just put the hat. We'll see what I'm feeling once I get the hat on there. There we go. And I'll deal with the hat first. Sometimes it takes a few attempts to get it closer exactly where you want it. It looks like I got it there. It's close enough. Now, I don't want this gluey stuff on the polished surface that much. So I'm going to use my pegwood here. I'm going to keep the paper up in the air a little bit. You can always use pegwood to clean up the surface afterwards. And I'm going to use my hand to sort of balance here and just kind of gently rub, just kind of following the contours, the design of the logo. Now, should be able to peel the paper off, and the logo will stay. There we go. Now we have the hat on the movement. Now the question is, do I put the 10.6 on it? Just get a visual look here. I could put the 10.6 here underneath of jewels. I could put it over here to the side. One thing I've noticed over time with these logos is that adhesion just improves over time, and it's not going to fall off. It's not going to come off. You'd really have to work at it, push it hard to get that to happen. Okay, so next thing I need to do is install the dial. And what I'm going to have to do first is pull the dial hooks out, so the feet will go into locations. So you can see I've pulled this one out already. There's little hooks, and you've got to basically pry them out. You can use tweezers or a little screwdriver to flip that open. I'll usually keep the rotor over the balance wheel just to help for protection purposes. It does take a little bit of force, but you can see it will pop out enough so that the dial feet can go into those locations. You can see them sticking out the sides. I've removed the spacer from the front of this since I was done applying the logo. It's easier just to put the spacer on the back of the dial and kind of get it centered in the locations where the cutouts are for the dial feet. So we have the spacer there on the back of the dial, and then we can't forget, easy mistake, rookie mistake, don't forget the hour wheel. Here it is. It comes with the movement. This one has the dial washer on it already, so easy to forget that. Don't forget that, and make sure the teeth are meshed together correctly, and then you can set the dial on the movement. So now that the movement's flush with the dial, we can move these hooks back into place. And these have a sharp edge on them, and what that'll do is it'll cut into the side of the dial foot and keep it nice and secure and in place. But it will take a little bit of pressure to get that pushed in all the way. I use this to help me a little bit, so I can put pressure down on the dial, it not move around, and push this hook back into place. Flip this around to the next location. Everything is flush, and then pushing that back into place. Now we have the dial attached to the movement, and since I was playing around with the dial upside down, it's good to give it a cleaning with some Rotor. This is what we're looking like. You can see that the spacer there is flush with the edge, so the spacer is polished there right next to the dial, and that's resting right against that top edge, which looks a little blasted. Now this is where you're going to have to sort of pick and choose a little bit. You could go ahead and take the stem out and put the hands on it, case it, and put the new stem in. I like to have a stem in there so I can make sure my hands are aligned correctly. And so what that means is I'm going to put the hands on, and then I'm going to have to flip it over, make sure I don't mess up the hands whenever I go to remove the existing stem before I put it in the case. So it's kind of choosing your battles, but you got to do what you got to do. I really ate some better cots. This thing's cut off circulation. So we'll start with the hour hand. So the size on the ETA 2800 series here and the Soletta 200, which is what we got. The hour hand is 1.5 millimeter. The minute hand is 0.9 millimeter. And the seconds hand is 0.25 millimeter. That's the size of the hole. Use 12 o'clock as your alignment. So I'm gonna place the hour hand on here. I like to use a simple hand pusher when possible. This one's for the 64, 97, 98 sort of watches, but it has a 1.5 on one end. And so I'll use this, and then I'll use my other hand pusher for the other hands. But good way to test, here's just a thick piece of paper. And how easily can that thick piece of paper get under there? Not very easily. Get a little regular sheet of paper. How easily can that slide? Is there room for that little piece of paper? Just a little bit. I'm going to bend up the hand a little, as long as it's not dragging the dial. Okay, so that's good. Time for the minute hand. This is where I'll have to use my hand pushing tool, which I won't show that process on camera. I've shown it in earlier videos, but it looks like this, right? And you set the movement on here and push. So once you have these pushed on where you think you've got them correctly aligned, it's good to take some trips around, see particularly at like 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, making sure that they are exactly aligned, and if one needs any slight adjustment, give it a nudge. Also like wiping the hands down with some Rotor. Also need to flip this to the side and make sure that the hands aren't interfering with each other. You can see a gap between them. As you can see, there is. Now I've shown hand setting in other videos. The big thing to remember is get the date to where it just flips, then set the hour hand at 12, and then the minute hand. So what I should see here is between 11 and 12, that date will start to move. And then if I've got it close, when I get about right to 12, it flips. Hardest part about this process is getting the seconds hand on the post and then using a flat pusher to push it down. Get this started. Make sure it's on the post, which it is. Now what I'll do is put this in the hand pusher and give it a nice firm press down. Flip that on so we can make sure I've got hand clearance on top of the minute hand. Got plenty of room. It's nice to have hacking movements. Oh, non-hacking's okay too, I guess. All right, so the next thing I need to do is attach this to the movement holder. So case screws came with the movement. Here's the holder that goes inside the case, and we need to put screws in here. One goes right here, and the other one goes right there. All right, and how I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to use the underside of the movement holder itself. Basically, I just don't want the hands touching anything. Pick up this screw with some Rodico and get it next to the hole or just inside the hole. The hardest part about this is getting them just stood up straight so you can go straight down with the screwdriver. Get a couple spins. I mean, these things are sized like exactly the size. See, you get it stood straight up, then just screwdriver straight down a couple turns, and then it's just easier to use. Now we need to remove this stem. So on these Siletta 200 series movements or the ETA 2800 series, you want the stem in the time setting position before you attempt to pull it out. If it's all the way in position 0 where it's running, you will screw up the keyless works, have to take the whole thing apart and put it back together again. And after all this work, that is the last thing you want to do. The slot to get the stem out of here is right here. You can see it's got sort of a circle in the center, but it's got some slots on the side next to it. It's because it's meant to use a screwdriver. Don't ever use like a needle or something sharp. It will mess it up as well. So this is meant to take a particular size screwdriver. It's the 80 yellow on the Bertrand set. So what we'll do is there's a little push pin in there. I'm gonna push down on this with the screwdriver and pop the stem out. Easy to push. Again, if you don't do it that way correctly, you'll screw up the keyless works. Here's a case that this is going into. It's a 42mm case. These are beautiful cases. They have polished bezel and case back, but the sides and lugs are brushed. The person wanted a screw down crown, so this is a screw down crown, also polished. All right. Oh, by the way, if you can hear jazz in the background, it's because I often listen to jazz while I'm working. Hopefully it's not distracting. Good background music is always nice. So we want to drop this in here without any fanfare. And by that I mean without any issues. So going to get it straight over center and then plop it down into place. I really like how that 10-6 worked out. It looks nice. It's a stem that comes with the movements. By default is 16mm, but this is a 42mm case and I need one that's longer to fit in this. So I have 20mm stems that I've got to cut down to the right size, cut a few millimeters off so that it's the right length. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken the stem that came with the movement and I put it on the crown that came with the case, and it's a screw down crown. As you can see, it's too long. So what I need to do is trim a couple millimeters off of the stem so that it will fit the case correctly. And you got to be careful with this because it's a screw down crown, so it's got a little bit of push to it. You want to measure and always cut a little bit less than what you need to, because you can always shave more off, but you can't add any back to it. Well, I mean, I guess you could with an extender, but so what I'm going to do is I measure, and if I recall, I have to cut about 3mm off of this thing. I will take this stem out. Again, make sure it's in the time setting position. A little poke and out the stem comes. Take the crown off. Now I need to measure about 3mm on this stem, and I'll take my stem cutter, snip off what I need to, and it'll be good to go. Here's what a good stem cutter tool looks like. Now when you cut this, I recommend covering it with your hand because
That piece of metal, I'm gonna give this a snap, go flying anywhere. Feel it hit the hand. There we go. May need to file down the end. And some nice little files sitting around. Okay, that's good. Doesn't take much. They just file pretty easily. Okay, so crown is attached to the stem, nice and snug. And now we can see how well this fits. Should be much closer to what we need. Might need to file some more off, but we'll see. Okay, there we go. Now it still has where it can push a little bit. Looks like it's probably going to be about right. Okay, so now that I have the stem cut to the appropriate length, I don't always do this, but I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite. I use sometimes 243. It's just a medium strength. You don't want a super strength. You might want to take that crown off at some point. Real lightly, just a little bit on the end of the threads. You can see it here. There we go. And just carefully screw that in. Again, just a medium strength. You'll see there's a little bit of excess there. And just wipe that away. This way you don't have to screw it down super tight. If you twist really hard, and you can break the stem. So just enough, and then that will stick. It'll be good. Now we can finally get this in here to stay. And then we'll be able to flip this over and get a really good look at what this watch is looking like. Should be able to pull it out. Okay. Date, time setting, single push in, screw down works perfectly and goes right to the edge and tight. Awesome. So that's exactly where we want it. By the way, with the Loctite, all you got to do if you want that off there, take the stem out, just warm it up a little bit. That medium Loctite will get soft and easy to take off. But on a regular day, it won't. So here we have the case back. It's polished. It's got exhibition back, as you can see. The two more things we care about are the case back gasket and the tension spring. So let me set the gasket down over here for a second. So I'm gonna just pat around here on the inside of this exhibition back. Tension spring sits down inside of this, like so. It just helps keep pressure whenever it's screwed down. Keeps, you know, spring-loaded pressure, the case back against the top side of the case. Now we gotta get the gasket lined up in here. Gaskets can be a little misshapen to start, but should fit down in there nicely. Come on, baby. Do the locomotion. Stay down there for me. There we go. All right, now I can start turning the case, and then I can work on tightening it up. I am going to take the back off of this. This is going to look so good. Okay, let me get my case tool. Now I've got my case tool sized up correctly. Now I can start tightening this thing down to where it's nice and water resistant. You want to call it that. 10 ATM, actually. This is a really good case. I love this case, actually. It's one of my favorites. Some people like alignment on here in certain ways. Happened to work out this time for where I got the threads started. It's nice and tight, tightened down. This is the look the person wanted. Ran everything by them. Let them pick out the hands. They, helped work out the design they wanted. It's a beautiful case, beautiful combination. And the exhibition back looks great. Brought to you by 10-6 Watches. Another custom build. All right, I just wanted to take a minute to show what this watch looks like in its final state. It's got a nice simplicity about it. It's in a beautiful 42mm case. It's a style of case I use for a variety of watches, but it's got some brushed lugs, and the side of the case, the bezel is polished. Got polishing on the crown and the back as well.
Love it on this tan strap. It's just black design and text. See a nice border around the date window and simple hour and minute marks. This watch is purchased as a personal gift and as a surprise for somebody. You can see it's very personalized, got someone's signature and drawing of birds. It's very beautiful in its simplicity. Now, usually I do put my logo on dial side, but for particular customers and projects, sometimes I will work it in a different way. In this example, I put the logo on the rotor since it's an exhibition back, and this is extremely polished case back. You can see it's 10 ATM water resistant, so 100 meters, 300 feet, good water resistance on this case. And it's sapphire crystal, so good high quality. And that Siletta 200, and on the rotor, you can see I have my 10.6 logo. Again, sort of a unique arrangement I did, and I think it looks pretty good on the rotor this way. I've got the hat, and usually that 10.6 is underneath the hat, but of course there's not space for my logo the size that it is, so I put that 10.6 next to it, and it looks good. So nice looking watch all around. And I know I showed more about making the dial, but it's always good then to see the final product, and it does indeed look wonderful. For a custom low-cost production route option of using water slide decals, and it looks fine, looks good. Now you put that under a macro lens, you'll see some of the lines, particularly the ones that are angled, might have a little bit of a rougher edge to them, but to the eye, looks fine. So there's that.
As I mentioned in the intro, I really enjoyed working on this watch, and the best moment for me was after the watch had been delivered. I got video from the customer, opened the box and put it on their wrist, and even though they were going to give it to someone else as a gift, and was just thrilled. The smile, the laughter, and being able to give somebody that, even though it's a product and you're making it for them at a cost, it's still a very personal connection that you have with your clients. If you're doing one-off custom designs, it's the way I handle my small little nano brand 10.6 watches, and I love working one-on-one and spending time, weeks, months, back and forth, getting to know the client, and also getting them exactly what they want, and that they'll be happy with that watch. That's the process of building a watch beginning to end. I hope you find it helpful in your own watch journey, whether you just like horology or you're trying to tinker, learn, and try to figure out how to do these sort of things yourself. As always, subscribe if you haven't, hit the bell if you want updates, follow me on Instagram at watch_complications. And if you want lots of other watch content, be that in making, reviews, how-tos, you're wanting to work with me on making a custom watch or a custom part, check out watchcomplications.com. You could also go to 10.6watches.com and you'll find lots of information there. Thanks everyone for joining me. I'm Brian. I am out.